Well, he's currently at the Titans camp. He's been to 8 different NFL camps. Monday morning quarterbacks Albert Breer, senior NFL reporters, now joining us. He's been to the Bengals, the Colts, Kansas City, Minnesota, Detroit, Tennessee, and Green Bay. So let's start with Green Bay because 3 years of Jordan Love, and we have some grainy footage in a couple of games. We don't know anything. People say nice stuff, but there's increasingly a belief that it could be okay, not a star, not awful, kind of okay. We would know if he was a disaster. We know if he's Mahomes. My guess is he's going to be okay. What's your interpretation? What do you see?
I mean, what I heard was it's a big we'll see at this point. They don't know what this is going to look like over the course of a full season. They're encouraged what they saw in the Philadelphia game last year. And I think looking at the history of this is really important, Colin. If you go back over the first 2 years of his career, they were really worried about where he was developmentally, and he turned a corner over the last year, which is part of why they were comfortable moving away from Aaron Rodgers. So there's encouragement over his progress over the last 3 years. They really like him as a person and who he's been in that building and how he's handled everything. But I think they're sort of in this position where, and I can tell you this is what they're saying inside those walls. It took us a little while to know for sure on Aaron Rodgers. If you remember that first year that Aaron Rodgers became the starter, they drafted 2 quarterbacks. It was Brian Brom and Matt Flynn that year. And, really it wasn't until they got into that first season that they really started to learn who Aaron Rodgers is. And I think that's where they are with Jordan Love right now. It's like we knew about Mahomes, and we heard about all those stuff, that stuff in practice that was happening in 2018. That's not the case here, but I think there's plenty to be encouraged about.
Okay, let's talk about Detroit. Good roster. A lot of questions. I think we're a little too hot on them. I think they'll be humbled against Kansas City in week 1. The defense, last year they had to win by shootout. Is there hope they can have a reasonable defense, middle of the pack this year?
I think like the big thing that you want to look at is 2 areas of improvement. One of them is going to be internal. And I think that's what the defensive line and guys like Aiden Hutchinson, who they've drafted over the last couple of years, and they really feel like their defensive line is ready to match their offensive line. And their offensive line right now is one of the best in the league. So if you're strong on the line of scrimmage, one thing I've learned all these years covering the league, you're going to be in every game. And then I think part of it on the next part of it on defense is going to be on that back end. And they really feel like now they've got a lot of movable pieces. Brian Branch, the kid they drafted from Alabama, is obviously a very big piece of this, kind of a guy who can play corner, can play safety, can play nickel. And Aaron Glenn has a lot of these guys that he can kind of move around. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson from the Saints is another one who he can move around the defensive formation and disguise. And so I think they feel like they're in a much better position to maximize Aaron Glenn as a defensive coordinator in his 3rd year in control there, and that the defense is getting a lot closer where the offense was a year ago. And the offense should be really good again. Of course, it's going to be a little while till they get Jameson Williams back, but they were really good without him last year too.
So I said week 1, we're going to have a shocker. And the 2 games I said, this sounds crazy. Just be very careful if you're Philadelphia without Shane Steichen going to Foxborough. Bill O'Brien has pulled off a lot of shockers in his career. He'll go to tricks. He does a very good job with quarterbacks. Belichick's a brilliant defensive mind, going to throw a lot of stuff at a brand new coordinator. The other one is, it sounds crazy, but watch the Colts. We have no idea what Anthony Richardson is. He could have 14, 15, 16 rushes. Jacksonville's breaking in Ridley, lot of expectations, divisional rival. You've been at the Colts camp. I don't think they're a great team. Can they be great for 3 hours to open? I don't know what they are offensively. What's your guess on Richardson?
Well, I mean, what you explained sort of reminds me of week 1 Washington in 2012, right? Like, you remember that in the Superdome when nobody had any idea what Washington was going to do with Robert Griffin and Kyle Shanahan had cooked up, and they kept it all under wraps over the course of the summer. And then boom, they threw it at them. So I'm with you. I mean, I think early in the year, there could be a little bit of unknown for opponents playing against the Colts. And I'll say this too, like, they're going to make Anthony Richardson earn it. They're going to try to get him a lot of reps. They've got joint practices coming up with the Eagles and the Bears, and they're going to get him in those preseason games. I think that they really feel internally like, even though he's raw, this is a kid that doesn't need to sit. This is a kid who needs to play. And to get him out there, they're going to have to do things to make him comfortable. And to get him out there, they're going to have to do things schematically that are different than what you're seeing across the league. And so I'm with you. I think over the first month of the season or so, it's going to be a real guessing game for teams playing against the Colts. And it could be a situation not unlike what we had in Washington in 2012. And certainly, if there's a coach who's going to have that sort of stuff in his bag, like Shane Steichen's one of those guys. Like we saw what he was able to do for Jalen Hurts and putting in the Oklahoma run game in Philadelphia over the last couple of years. So I think there's definitely some validity to what you're trying to say there. And I think because they have Anthony Richardson, a lot of different things are on the table.
Okay, I want to throw Minnesota some love. I was watching the NFL Network the other day, and Kevin O'Connell for 90 minutes had the mic on, and I swear to God, I couldn't have filled space better. The guy is literally the next great talk show host in America. I was just so blown away by how quick and funny and alert. I was just like, This is incredible. This guy he's like McVay. He's a taller version of McVay. He can just go and talk. And then I watch Kirk Cousins in Netflix, and I'm like, I really like Kirk Cousins. Yeah, he's a little corny, whatever. But I think a lot of us fall into this. Okay, they're not going to go 11-0 in games. Yeah. And Detroit's getting love, and Chicago's getting love, and we're talking Green Bay. And here's this 12-13 win team last year. Nobody's talking about. You were there. What's your vibe on the Vikings?
Well, let's start here with what you said about McVay. You know, his nickname in Washington was Tall McVay, because Sean went through there too. Like at the end of his time in Washington, because of who he was, his personality, and his potential as a coach, they called him Tall McVay. So it's funny that you say that. I think one thing that I really took from being around the Vikings is how unified that building is and what Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah have done in really creating the right kind of culture, carrying some of that over from the last regime. And then it's just the way they treat people. And I think this is a hallmark of Sean McVay too, right? Like, look at all the veterans that they either took pay cuts or were in contract disputes or they offloaded over the course of this offseason, right? How many of those guys had bad things to say? Harrison Smith took a pay cut. Patrick Peterson's gone. Dalvin Cook's gone. Like, Adam Thielen's gone. Eric Kendricks is gone. How many of those guys have you heard say anything bad about their experience going through that with the Vikings? And it's because they treated each one of those guys the right way, right? So, like, I think that's something that a locker room pays attention to. And I think, like, you see it on the field now with how unified they are. And then it's how they're getting the most out of their players. They bring in Brian Flores, who I think is going to be fantastic as the defensive coordinator. And then on the offensive side, I think Kevin O'Connell's bringing out another level in Kirk Cousins. And Kirk said this to me himself. Like, he believes that being a quarterback is a combination of being an artist and a robot. Maybe for a long time he was a little bit more of a robot.
Yeah.
Now he's becoming more of an artist, which is what that 4th and 18 throw to Justin Jefferson was. That was not where the play told him to go. He put his guy in position to make a play. And so, like, I think you combine all those things, the way they treat people, the way they're unified, where the culture is. There's a lot of page turning that's going on this year. There's no question about it. They've cleaned out their cap. All those guys I named are out. But, I really think that this is the sort of team where they're going to work things out early in the year. And then when we get to the last month or so of the season, whether they make the playoffs or not, we'll see. I think you're going to see a really good football team, which will portend good for the future.
All right. So is it Titans camp? Does Will Levis have a chance to threaten Tannehill for the starting job? A chance?
I didn't see it out there. I mean, I think that they like the competition they're getting from the two young guys, and it's been competitive between Malik Willis, who a lot of people forget he's on the team, and Will Levis. And the idea here is to draft and develop players through the system at that position, the same way the Packers did all those years ago with Ron Wolf. I still feel like this is Ryan Tannehill's team. I also, as much as they've done to, I think, flip over the roster a little bit with new general manager Rand Carthon in here, I think they might be a little better than people think. And I think because of that, there's an investment in winning right now. And the best option right now is Ryan Tannehill. Now, if we get to week 6, week 7, week 8, and they've fallen out of the race and they aren't as good as maybe they think they'll be here, then I think it's certainly possible that we see one of the young guys. But my sense right now is they feel like Ryan Tannehill is going to be playing his best football. He should be motivated. He's in the contract year. And because of the respect Vrabel has for that locker room that he's built, I don't see this being as the sort of year where they say, okay, we're throwing everything overboard in the name of developing a young quarterback.
Albert Breer, great talking to you, buddy. We'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks, Colin.
All right. Good stuff. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.